Love it or hate it, homebrew exists, and it's because people are creative and innovative. However, today's topic is bad homebrew rules. So, what's the worst that you've actually seen? I've said this before, and I'm gonna say it every time. I had a DM who gave a wisdom or intelligence save against persuasion checks. It didn't matter what we were asking for or the context. If they succeeded, they would not help, even if it was objectively bad for them. They've also said multiple times that people who had an 18 or over in intelligence should automatically succeed. They didn't listen to insight is a wisdom skill, or that there's a table that tells you how to run charisma checks in the DMG. D6 to determine movement every round. Well, I guess us melee marshals will just go fuck ourselves then. I had a DM that, I think in order to make combat more fun for our barbarian who was new, said that any attack roll over 20 total was a crit. My moon druid suddenly really loved being in fire elemental form while doing melee attacks, and our monk realized his peak when he got +2 hand wraps and crit 4 times in one turn. Pretty much any time a DM asks for a roll when the player should just be able to do it. You said the stream is just 5 feet across. Alright, I jump over it. Roll acrobatics. Oh, it's just a 12. You fall face first into the water and take 2 bludgeoning damage. What am I, 5? I walked out of a campaign because the DM did not allow multi-attacks. You just got more damage dice. Yeah, no, I'm good. Crit fumbles on everything. I left a campaign and eventually lost a friend over it. It's just that disruptive, and they wouldn't stop. Lamau, random 5 tornadoes. Let's re-roll characters. To sneak attack in 5th edition, you have to surprise the enemy. The rest of the text on sneak attack is in the description, and it's all irrelevant. Yeah, all irrelevant. Not really homebrew, but a ruling made in the middle of a game. I wanted to dash and then long jump over a 10 to 15 foot gap. I can't remember the exact measurements, but I had a 16 to strength, so no issues there. The DM was going to give me disadvantage on the acrobatics roll to land safely on the other side, simply because I was using dash to get across, and it was considered reckless because I was running all out. If anything, you should be basically given a buff because momentum? What, the DM's an idiot. Selective usage of combat in initiative order actually works well at our table in exploration mode. It prevents spotlighting and allows everyone to do their own thing and contribute. I actually kind of like that. I like that. When I first started, we would roll initiative, and then whoever rolled the highest, he would just have our turn order go clockwise around the table. It was fine to help us learn the game, but after a while, I found myself sitting next to the rogue so that I could always be second and get all my buffs applied to the party before they started attacking. The worst was when the rogue sat to the right of the DM, and so all the enemies went before the party. I had a DM who had this convoluted rule, where if you rolled a 1 or a 20, you then rolled a d4 to determine severity. Severity could range, for a natural 1, from a 1 knocking you unconscious for the fight to a 4, literally throwing your entire group into another plane of existence. Oh, and you lose a magic item too. If you don't have a magic item or boon to lose, you die. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Your character dies. For a natural 20, for example, a 1 would be a standard critical roll, even if it was something like a saving throw or a skill check, and a 4 would literally end a combat, even if it's a big bad evil guy tier combat, and you get a magic item, and you get a magic item. Thank you, Oprah DM. The DM then ruled that halfling luck and the lucky feat didn't work. You had to jump through a bunch of rolls to even see if it's applied to the natural 1 that you rolled, because everyone ended up taking lucky. The DM didn't use gold or provide loot, etc., so the only way to get magic items was to basically ask for it and roll to see if you were able to arbitrarily find what you wanted, or get lucky rolling a 24 and get 1 randomly generated for you. Inspiration gives you a free nat 20 on any d20 roll. This one wasn't bad, it was just more unbalanced than anything. Paired with the fact that you got inspiration from arriving on time or bringing snacks, some ridiculous shenanigans were pulled in that game, making it a little bit harder for us players. Weather! Roll a d20 every morning. Refer to the weather table, 1 to 20. If it rained, we all got wet, cold, and uncomfortable, making it really hard to light a fire. Upon a storm on a 1 to 3, well, there was a chance to get hit by lightning if you were out in nature. Accommodation quality. Roll a d20. If we rolled poorly, there would be rats, bed bugs, lice, ticks, and other nuisances like the bard constantly poking your ballsack. The more we paid, the higher the plus on the roll, so we could avoid such things that actually made us sick and gave us a fever. Another rule was taken from the Dark Eye. If you took damage amounting to at least half your current life points, you got a deep wound. This would impact you even if you healed the life points until you rested for a few days in a row without fights. Each wound imposed a -1 penalty on everything. This should make the fights and healing more realistic. Now, personally, I find injuries and deeper wounds or bloodied statuses and all that to have scars and scratches, those kind of things make the game a little bit harder but a little bit more interesting. Just don't go overboard with it, please. I had a DM who made us roll for everything. For example, when climbing a ladder, he would make us roll for strength. It was frustrating. In another game, I had a DM who used a last hit rule. If you were the one to kill the creature, you got the experience points. I played a bard who focused on damage mitigation and crowd control, so I hardly ever dealt direct damage. I had a DM who required all arcane users to have components as well. We had to hunt for them ourselves since there was no set price, and they were consumed on use, so we had to constantly hunt for them. The first 2 hours of every session were spent with all the arcane users rolling survival checks to find components. Eventually, all the arcane users switched to martial classes. Our group of 6 became fighters, barbarians, and rangers. Ditching, the AC system for contested attack rolls. If the defender rolls higher than the attack is blocked or dodged, depending on how you tried to evade it. It didn't help that when you tried to parry and succeeded, you got to make a counterattack, which obviously got abused. Why would anyone only dodge when they could attempt to parry for the same result plus some additional damage? Oh, and a nat 1 attack always warranted a counterattack. That dealt double damage, by the way. Oh, and quadruple if you rolled a nat 20 on top of that. It was fine in the beginning since none of us really knew how this game worked, but now I just wish we could adapt the AC system. My own worst homebrew rule was rolling on the lingering injuries table when you got knocked out in 5th edition. I was new to this system, coming from Pathfinder 1st edition, high five, and didn't like the Chumbawamba stop the thumping of early level heroes with healing word or lay on hands. So I made a rule that you had to roll on that table. After the first game, I realized it was a bad idea when I had 2 players missing an eye and 1 missing a foot. Again, injuries are fine, breaking a hand or severely damaging a muscle, causing you to slow down or lose like 1 point of initiative. That's fine after like a little bit, but don't go overboard with it. And of course, I get it. 5th edition is kind of like, unga, me so strong. We can mitigate that better. When my group first started playing years ago, we did crit fumbles. We also had a wild magic sorcerer, and we as a group wanted to see the actual surges, so the DM made it so that the sorcerer rolled on the surge table every time that he would ever cast any spell or cantrip. We were really unlucky with the sorcerer constantly landing on the fireball centered on yourself result. The DM also homebrewed the crit 1 result into fireball on an ally. My poor Kenku didn't have any feathers left by the time that campaign ended. I only use out-of-combat initiative to make sure everyone gets a turn. I have 2 players who are quiet and don't talk much, and if I didn't give them a chance to do things they might not get to. I make sure to ask before we move on, of course, but giving them a dedicated turn to do what they want actually helps. I also use a crit and fumble chart, which has led to some amazing moments, like when our monk lock one-tapped a boss. It's about how it's implemented and used, I feel. I built the chart into the lore. The god of trickery cast a spell over the world to make your failures worse and your successes greater, even allowing you to do something that might be considered impossible. You know, I used to use crit fumbles, but now I do it very infrequently and only when it feels thematically or situationally appropriate. I'm also more likely to use them for monsters and less likely to force a player to do it. I've seen and heard stories of DMs using crit fumbles to permanently cripple a character, so when I do use them, it usually just wastes a turn or an action mechanically. One issue I've seen is that once you start rolling multiple attacks in a turn, the chances of rolling a 1 increases significantly, from a 5% chance to a 10.7% chance with 2 hits, 15.3% with 3, 19.5% for 4, and 22.6% with 5. Even rolling at disadvantage increases your chance from 5% to 10.7%. I've tried rolling initiative every round. It made combat more dynamic, but also slogged it horribly. If I were to do it again, I'd use a program or app that automatically rolls initiative for everyone rather than asking each person to roll, as it breaks the flow way too much. I really hate when the game flow breaks in combat. It can't be avoided, but it can be mitigated. I guess initially a bad ruling that became a table rule was you can't use healing word on downed allies. They're unconscious, so they can't hear you. It's probably my fault that it became a table rule because when they acted like I was crazy or dumb for thinking that I could use it, I said something like, "If that's the way it works in your world, I'll respect it. I'm just saying that's not how it works according to rules as written." The DM checked the player's handbook real quick. It wasn't a huge begrudging thing, and we were good friends and said, "Huh, well that's the way we've always played, and we like it that way, so let's just house rule it." Months later, they revised this ruling and didn't tell me. It wasn't a hill I was fighting and dying on. I think they literally forgot. During the only session I missed, they changed it and told me afterward like it was a fun fact. "So-and-so realized it's not actually a requirement, so you could totally do that." They actually told me after someone else used it and I cited the house rule. Honestly, it's probably not the worst rule someone's ever come up with, just mildly infuriating as an overall experience. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and of course, if you want to help us out at all by keeping the lights on, getting some early access to videos, or maybe hearing some outtakes, which I frequently have some, sign up for our membership. It helps us, and it gives you a little bit of a way to give back without submitting to YouTube's algorithm lords. We love you all. See you next time, and please remember, at the end of the day, no matter if you join our membership or not, we value every single one of your voices. Even if the whole world doesn't, we certainly do. Love you all. See you next time. Toodaloo.